The fact that you guys tried was brilliant. To prepare, I was reading and watching V for Vendetta last night as well. I think that was good preparation. I think in any sort of debate, and in particular parliamentary debate or the World Schools debating format, we have to understand that fundamentally we're looking for clash. That means that we want to establish the grounds on which two teams on a common basis can really come together and say, well, you're correct on this particular stance and you're not correct on this particular stance as well. So what we want to tell from the word go was to tell the teams that even though you are looking at the words in the motion at the beginning on a literal basis, perhaps from a dictionary, it doesn't necessarily have to be applied in the same literal manner into a particular debate. So anarchy as it is, when you look at it from a definitional point of view, refers to the dissolution of government and the absence of government. But in the same way in which when we have a debate on capitalism, and when capitalism is applied to a modern working society, it's not pure capitalism. It's not, and democracy isn't pure democracy in the sense that not everyone is voting on every single issue that is being passed at government. That in capitalistic societies, you still have social safety nets. And even within the communist society, thank you, we're not talking about the presence of absolute equality. There is still some differentiation. So when we talked about political ideology, we are talking about this concept becoming a core component of that particular political parties, policies in terms of the laws that they're going to pass and whether this can play a part. So we were hoping to have seen not on the absence of government or the presence of government, but perhaps more in terms of the philosophy behind anarchy and whether we should have big government and small government, whether we should have been talking about, you should have the government running everything, which is the opposite of anarchy, or should you have the elements of anarchy as a guiding principle for government policy, whereby if something can be done by the people, let the people do it. We're not going to be involved, and then we'll keep the government small. So what we had instead was a very technical sort of debate, something that we call a definitional debate, where two teams came to the debate and decided that, well, we're going to be looking at a slightly more stricter definition. On the opposition team, they took basically the same understanding of the word anarchy and said that, well, anarchy means no government, and we think that any sort of government is a good idea, right? So it's a little bit absolute. Right. And at the same time, we heard a very interesting definition of the word valuable as well from proposition, who were saying that, well, anything that can impart some sort of learning experience for the government or for the people provides value. And as a result, that's good enough for us. So we were having a debate that was happening on a very extreme and absolute grounds, and at times not really agreeing on what was happening. So how do we then actually resolve these sort of definitional debates where neither team can agree on what was happening? We often have these debates when the words are not clear in the motions. For example, we've had debates being conducted on drugs. One team wanted to talk about banning narcotics. The other team talked about, well, we shouldn't ban pharmaceuticals, even though they're talking about drugs. So in these sort of debates, if two separate debates are happening almost in terms of two separate definitions, the team that is going to be able to win ultimately tends to be the one that is able to debate on both grounds. And the two magic words that we often like to hear is even if, meaning the team is able to stand up there and say, well, okay, we think that your definitional premise is flawed, but assuming you're correct, even if you are correct, the logical premise by which you try to prove the argumentation is actually wrong as well. So that notion of the even if argumentation has to be there. Secondly, it's not enough for you to stand up here on either side and say that our definition is right, your definition is wrong. Why? Because I say so. Or why? My dictionary was thicker than yours, right? You can't do that. So what we needed to hear was an explanation as to why your definitional parameters are correct, why they're more apt, and why they might be more in the spirit of the debate, and why it's actually a slightly more relevant issue in today's society, and this is why you ought to have the debate. Some level of explanation is needed rather than to assert that you have the correct definitional explanation here. And we felt that the team that took the debate today, that won, was able to do a much better job in terms of explaining why the definitional values were actually a little bit more accurate. Then we actually come to the substantive material, the argumentation and the rebuttal that was needed to support the various argumentation as well. And in parliamentary debate and in world schools debating format, we're always looking for the development of argumentation. Meaning, as the speakers go down the line, we're hoping to see more constructive material from the first speaker, more constructive material in support or in opposition to the motion in the second speaker. But by third speaker, we want to see more rebuttal action happening, meaning to directly refute what the other speakers have said. So we felt that the team that won the debate had a little bit more diversity when it came to their own constructive material, whereas the other team that didn't win today tended to have been a little bit more repetitive in terms of saying the things that they've been saying. We heard the same argumentation coming up in the first proposition being repeated in the second proposition, and it's in the same way as well. There were some points which are being repeated here on the opposition side as well, and this is something that they need to be very careful about, not to always just rehash the thing, right? If you're rehashing, then the credit continues to go to your first opposition speaker rather than the speakers down the line, right? That's just what I found out when I tried to cheat on my exams, right? The person who did the original one got the scores, I didn't. So you actually generally need more on case. And the explanation within your analysis is very important. But this is where we felt both teams could have done a much better job. And this was to, first of all, slow it down and just try to give us a little bit more time to process. I guess you guys are a lot young. Okay, I'm not guessing. You guys are a lot younger, right? Very quick brains, and you're able to process the information very quickly, right? But the judges who are listening aren't quite telepathic, and they don't know what's happening in your mind. So you have to give the judges some time to process, right? So some of the judges felt that there was some argumentation that was just being sped through that we didn't even hear or didn't even have time to take it down. And if we didn't take it down, it doesn't exist. Right? So how anarchic, right? So if that is the case, then all the time that you spent delivering the point is really for naught, and you don't want to have that as well. So give some time for us to deliver. The other thing that really makes your argumentations powerful is to give us something visual. I'm sure that all the teachers have told you that you need to provide examples. And the reason to provide examples is to show that something out there does happen. And as a result, we're not talking about a purely fluffy idea about pink elephants, right? Pink elephants, okay, pink skies or whatever. But we're talking about something that's happened before. So even if you can't show a completely anarchic society, to draw on examples such as, well, in the absence of a central government or a central government that doesn't have much power, such as in Somalia, what do you then tend to happen? In the presence of a very strong government that has very paternalistic rules, such as the one that you might find in the United Kingdom, what do you then happen, right? So what do you then see happening? So these are the examples that let the judges see immediately, right, what the points are. We can visually connect to the argumentation that you're making, and that makes your argumentation a lot stronger in the end. There were some attempts, like analogies that are being made to religion and all that, but until you make a direct hit with a direct example, then the argumentation that you're making isn't going to be as strong. There's just some technical points that we want to point out as well. We like to have the point of information because it's an opportunity for you to be as engaging as possible, even during the speeches as well. But the rule of thumb that we like to give is that within the 6, 7, 8-minute speech, to try to take about 2 points of information. If you try to take more, that means that you're spending a little bit too much time giving some attention to the other team rather than to be giving the time necessary for your rebuttals and your argumentation structure. And that at least within the parliamentary and world schools rules, the point of information is supposed to be a one-off sort of conversation, so there really shouldn't be any sort of like extra follow-ups. It's not a conversation here, but it's just a quick exchange that you need before you actually sit down as well. So fundamentally, in terms of why the team that won today, right, we felt that that was the team that was best able to handle the definitional issues and was able to best provide the explanations as to why their definitional grounds were actually more accurate, more suitable, and as a result carried the day. They were the team that also did the best job of doing both debates, having an even if, trying to tackle the argumentation that was being brought up by the other team as well as by their own team as well. And fundamentally, we felt that this was why the team that won the debate today won. I can make the announcement here for the result? Oh, okay. So.
Yeah, actually you can. Yeah.
Oh, all right then. Okay, so I don't know why I was being so cagey then. All right, if that's the case, it was not a unanimous decision, and as we pointed out before, some of the judges did have difficulties catching some of the argumentation. So at times this can create issues in terms of not the judges seeing the debate from a slightly different perspective as well, and this is what you want to avoid as much as possible, right? So it was a 4-1 decision in the end, and the debate today was won by Team Opposition.